This is the Ecommerce Braintrust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our Braintrust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Welcome to the Ecommerce Braintrust podcast. I'm Julie Spear, Head of Retail Marketplace Services at Acadia. And joining me today, I've got my co-host, Jordan Ripley, Director of Retail Operations. And we are very lucky to have two special guests. We were just joking before we got started that it might be a little tricky because their names are so similar. We have Ross Walker, Director of Retail Media here at Acadia. And hey, Ross. And we have Russ Dieringer from Stratably. Welcome, Russ.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Jordan suggested that perhaps we differentiate and call you Russell and Russell so that we don't mess up the names during the conversation today. But we'll try Ross and Russ and see how we do. Today is a special episode. We're going to close out 2024 with a bit of a mailbag episode. This will be our final episode for the year. And what we did is we reached out to about a dozen or so guests from the past year on the podcast and asked them two questions. One, what has been the most impactful change or development in our industry from this year and why? And two, what's something in our industry that excites you the most for next year? So we've got some great responses from great brains in our space, and we brought a couple more great brains in to talk about it today. So I'm excited to dig in.
Yeah, I feel like Russ and Ross, we'll go with your shortened names. I haven't run the numbers, but I feel like the two of you are our most frequent guests and appearances on the podcast. So it seems fitting that you would tie the bow on the year and dive into this. So I'm excited to get both your takes today.
Fantastic.
Yeah, right on. I feel honored. To be here and to get to join you all so often. So thanks for having me.
I might have to drop a Russell in there because it just rolls off the tongue. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
I've actually never heard that. I've never been called that before, and I've been called a lot of strange things, and I like it a lot.
We're innovators here on the Ecommerce Braintrust. All right. So we'll dig in. Two questions, but oh my gosh, so many different insights and takes to share. And I don't think it'll shock anyone that if we were doing like one of those word clouds of the answers that we got, that the biggest word right in the middle of the word cloud, I guess not word, acronym, would be AI. So any kind of prediction or look back that we're talking about in our space, of course, feedback is going to come relative to AI. And that was true here. More than 60% of the people that we reached out to highlighted AI either as the trend that was most impactful for this year or the development that they're most excited for next year. And it can be like one of those very nebulous terms that people apply to everything, but really can mean nothing sometimes. But in this case, it meant something. So we're going to zero in on areas where AI can add value, and we really want to focus in on specific areas and points of value that industry experts expect AI to really disrupt. Looking at the responses, there were a couple of key areas that were repeatedly highlighted. The first of these was the idea of personalization at scale. So it's the idea that, we've always understood you want to target and position things that are important, but often you're making trade-offs. You're making choices between the two. But with AI, personalization at scale can make it possible to target, let's say, specific audiences more effectively. And the cost of grouping them and tailoring content can almost become negligible thanks to AI. So this was something that the likes of like Lauren Levac-Gilbert at Digital Shelf Institute, Mike Balabanov at Criteo, and Jeff Cohen at Amazon, and Chris and Oscar at First Mover, and Alicia Ponzani at Premier Nutrition, Stephanie Gruber at Tarani, and our very own former host here, Kiri Masters, all spoke to. So there's a little sampling of who we reached out to. Long intro to my question. So there's consensus that more personalization at scale with AI is coming. How fast do we think we start to see this play out? And what does it look like? To what extent? Let's discuss away.
I can tell you that I've been exposed to like a number of personalized programmatic ads in the last 3 or 4 months based on the company that I work at, and even like the business unit that I'm in. So like I've been getting, which says to me that like there's a lot of deep scraping going on to customize messages for maybe not Ross Walker specifically, but like Ross at Acadia is getting some very specific programmatic ads. So
this is like for solution providers. Like, can you
for solution providers, 100%.
Okay. And just like out in the sort of digital marketing ecosystem, like you're
just
seeing
out in the wild, getting served something that like no human took the time to craft. Like there's no way.
And so, are these effective? Like that's the thing.
That was going to be my question. Would you say that this is an effective approach?
I refer them to like our marketing team. So yes.
Okay. So in this one case, all right, yeah. But so it's like the messaging, the creative, everything is sort of like into such a granular scale that it's clear that some amount of AI went into delivering this ad asset to you.
I mean, it really, really feels that way. Yeah.
So you
Which
see
is
it as
maybe like the uncanny valley of advertising, period. Like, did that need to be AI or is it really just like a good algorithm? I don't know.
Yeah. And that's what, like, Russ, I'd love your perspective on, because the capabilities are here, but the adoption, the effectiveness, that's where I feel like there's still some question marks. I'm wondering, Russ, what you're hearing in the industry around this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen Amazon's site become much more personalized over the last year, and then that has, second order effects in terms of things like measurement and what metrics are we paying attention to. If different users are seeing different search engine results, how do we think about metrics like share of voice, and do those become less useful over time? We've seen Amazon progress in terms of its personalized deals this year. This was something I feel like it really kind of beta tested on Prime Day of 2023, but really leaned in this year to personalized deals. That caused some challenges for brands in terms of planning, in terms of the visibility that they had grown accustomed to for their deals that were going on, that they were launching on Amazon. Some of those brands were telling us that they weren't getting as much reach as they historically had, and they are attributing it to these personalized deals. And I think this is just starting, right? So Walmart's doing personalized homepages, trying that out. So I think we're definitely going to see this progress in 2025. I think this does drive better conversion rates. That's very much an opinion. I'm not backing that with any actual data. I would say personally, anecdotally, as I see more personalized deals on Amazon, I'm adding to cart and buying, and it does feel different than a couple of years ago. Whether this is good or bad for society, where it just is just so pointed and like you just can't, it's so good and you can't resist. That's a different question. That's probably for a different type of podcast. But I think this will only increase conversion rates over time. It's going to be, that's going to help e-commerce grow faster. It's just another quiver in digital channels arsenal compared to shopping inside of a store, which is essentially, not personalized.
I just want to like push on that a little bit. Like, I would love to understand like what percent, like how is that being informed by AI? Like a lot, to me, most of that is just like a pure, straightforward algorithm that just says, you bought these patterns, so I'm going to show you, I don't see the AI piece of it, and so to me, the part that is like more about that I think is more interested on like personalization is on the like creative side. And I think Amazon is going that direction more with like the ad content that they've released. Like that's where I see that potentially manifesting itself more, like the tools where I can as an advertiser write into, I can pick my product and I can choose from like an assortment of backgrounds and it can generate some new custom creative for me. That to me feels more new. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that the personalization isn't personalization. It is. It definitely is. But I feel like the newness here is on the creative side.
Well, and in beyond just even the media, the personalization in like product titles and AI generated personalized product titles as well. So there's definitely, I think it led with some more personalization in the creative for media, but there's now, as it relates to like PDP content as well.
Mm-hmm.
A question I've always had on this that I'd love Russ and Ross is like people talking to a lot of brands to get your perspective on is like, clearly the marginal cost of creating an asset with AI has gone down. Now we can debate like the quality of that asset, but the cost undoubtedly has come down. But that doesn't solve scale entirely, right? The other side of that coin is in most brands, someone has to look at that asset and approve it and say this complies to our brand standards and that sort of thing. Like I haven't seen any solves for that component, which can be almost as lengthy in the asset production process. So I'm just curious, like, any of you have a perspective? Like, if we create 100 assets with AI, is there an approval mechanism around this, or is like, have you seen anything that addresses that part of the coin?
Yeah, I mean, I would credit Amanda Wolf talked to me about this several months ago, where AI is supposed to speed things up. Yeah. But inside of big brands, in particular, where there's a lot of approval processes, where there's all these controls in place to protect all that brand equity that they've built over 100 years or whatever, it actually it might actually slow things down ultimately. So I think the generative AI capabilities are helping smaller scale brands, the ones that just don't, that are just more nimble by definition, right? They're I feel like able to take advantage of some of these things more so than the bigger brands. So, so maybe it's just the adoption or the usefulness of some of those tools is not evenly distributed across all brands. It's you have to have sort of a tolerance or an openness or a ability to take advantage of the speed potential. And some brands just don't, they just have limiters, right or wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong, but they just have limiters in place and they're not, able to do it.
Yeah. I think, as the fear in the film industry and the writing and in the writing world is like, well, you're just like, really, you're erasing the labor of the creation of the content. But like all the stuff above it hasn't changed at all. The production, the direction, the like building of sets, what have you. I think in our world, to your point, Russ, it's very similar. I've got lots of brands who like have been who've been shown some AI content and have sort of said like, yeah, I'll pass that off, but it still needs to like go through multiple steps. There's no one has said like, let her rip. It's like any content you can think of, just like churn it out constantly. No one has said that yet.
Let us know if and when that happens.
Yeah,
I don't feel like it will.
I don't think it will.
I just don't feel like it will.
It'll be a fascinating case study.
I think there's like still opportunity for a solve there, right? That says like I can upload my brand standards and it will auto approve 80% of those assets. And, lots of technology enablement. I think that will happen in this space. Moving though from the like asset production, Russ and Ross, both of you highlighted the idea of like feeling, at least the feeling of being on the other side of this AI as a shopper and like already having some awareness of that, whether it's service providers or when you're on Amazon looking at promotion. And this was something that a lot of people in our survey highlighted. I mean, interestingly, mostly technology service providers. So this is Paul at Merchant Spring and Zach Christensen at Analytic Index and Megan Crone from Clear Data. All of them sort of spoke to this idea that like the shopper journey, right, of how people actually get to discover that product is different with AI, right? And so that might be something like you have a summary at the top of a product page that tells you, the reviews around this, or it might be like you're using a ChatGPT or a Perplexity or something like that to do sort of upper funnel discovery of products. And so I'm curious what the two of you are hearing around this of, if people are fundamentally discovering products differently because AI is a part of that process, like any perspectives on how brands might be investing towards that or sort of trying to meet that moment of the shopper journey now involving AI?
I have lots of brands that want to put optimization for AI on the roadmap. Like as soon as we have an idea about how to do it well, And in fact, our team internally has been starting to like share some more strategies around like, okay, how do you think through optimizing for Rufus with like what's going on with Cosmo in the background? Even lots of teams sharing screenshots of like, hey, I searched for, I asked this question to Rufus and look, our product popped up, and sharing that with their clients and their clients sharing like, hey, look at us, we're here first. And, the answer, right, there's no, like, we don't, no one has a really good answer for that yet. Like a super solid one of like, yep, this is the line to that position. And I think everyone wants to know what is the line to being first in results. Because to me, what adding Rufus does to Amazon is it takes it from being a purchase only platform with a super high conversion rate to being more of let me just ask some random questions and like start my product journey at an even higher level. And I think that changes the game on Amazon a lot.
Yeah, that mix, right? Like people always say, Google was your research platform, Amazon was your conversion platform, and like Rufus seems to turn that on its head a little bit.
Yeah, I think it does turn it on its head, and I agree wholeheartedly with what Ross said in terms of, what is the exact answer to influence those Rufus search results? That's something I think to be excited about to learn more about in 2025. It certainly, I think, at a minimum, suggests, all right, it's as important as ever to have really high quality content on our PDPs to understand what keywords matter. Let's have really strong content on our D2C site as well. And then let's try to get placement in high quality publications that we know these AI models are scraping from. I don't, is that, that's all, that should have always sort of been the case.
That's not really changing, of course.
Heightens the overall importance of it. But I think those are on Amazon, those are very powerful tools. I know Rufus has come under criticism for being, not all that helpful. I don't know. I might push back on that. I think that I've used it several times and it's been very, very helpful 9 out of 10 of those times. And sometimes it's off, but sometimes it's like very helpful. And the summary of reviews, I don't think I've read individual reviews since that started to become available. I mean, it's just easier. So this is, powerful stuff. And again, I think something to be excited about in 25 is, learning how to influence Rufus in a more, and other, AI models, I guess, in a more direct way.
Yeah. I think like we just had an episode where we had a couple people from Acadia's side kind of go into the new ways that AI is upending SEO across Amazon and Google. And one thing we discuss on that is like, we moved to this model of endless assortment on Amazon, which was good for price and it was good in many ways for consumers. But the downside of that is like a lot of times shopping was just kind of terrible, right? Like you would try to find the thing and it's like, okay, here's 20 brands I've never heard of here, And so if Rufus is able to disrupt that and say, here are 3 products and they're exactly what you looked for, like that's a huge unlock, I feel like.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the vast selection, which, this paradox of choice, right? Yeah. That is very challenging. And then even on the PDPs and even on the search results pages, there's just so much information that's showing nowadays that it's just like overwhelming. And so I don't think consumers necessarily want to, and they don't, right? They don't click through 12 pages of search results. They're going to click on the top one. And this is just sort of another, form of it. What's interesting to me, a little bit of a tangent too, is the lack of control that brands have over what Rufus provides. The same brands are complaining about the retail media tax, like, oh, we got to pay to show up at the top. It's like, we've always said, at least you get the chance to pay to show at the top. Otherwise, you've got this black box that's dictating what, the visibility of your products. Well, here we are with Rufus. I know they're starting to experiment with ads and that sort of thing, but this is what we're going back to a world of, you don't have control, and that's not a great world to be in either. So I guess you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. With having the ability to pay for placement.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this AI has been fascinating. I don't want to do the entire episode on AI, as tempting as that might be. And so
we covered 60% of the episode.
Right. So. It's exactly proportional to the responses in the minutes we have here. So we're right on track. Moving to a completely separate topic, and I actually misattributed this. This was one that a lot of our tech providers, Paul at Merchant Spring, Megadec, ClearData, Zach and Analytic Index, something we've talked about a lot with Jeffrey Billiard, who heads the data team over at PackView, is this idea of, we're now active across a variety of different retailers, and we know we're spending ads there. We know we're making some amount of sales there, but how do we actually cohesively measure across those channels? How do we assess incrementality, both within those channels and across those channels? And I think this is an age-old marketer's challenge. It's something that in traditional media that we saw media mix modeling attempt to ascribe value, right, to certain campaign buys. The thing that I think this is, at least what I'm seeing from talking to folks here is, the technology here is really enabling a tipping point of us measuring this in at least a more clear and concise and cohesive way across channels with things like clean rooms and that sort of technology. So the question here is, much like AI enablement, for this sort of cross-channel measurement and incrementality measurement, to me, this feels like a little bit like we're still in the early days and people are trying to figure out how do we bake these into processes. But Russ and Ross, again, with your ears to the ground, I'm curious, where do you see us in this journey? How much does this influence brands' media decisions next year? Does this become table stakes? What's your perspective on this trend headed into 2025?
Yeah, I think this is such an exciting area, an area that really promises to upend a lot of how we think about allocating spend, which is I would describe as in its infancy when it comes to even today with retail media. In our work, we've covered the limits of marketing mix models. So we know there are limitations there, especially when applied against retail media. We logically know, in the industry, we logically know that big platforms like Amazon have an impact beyond just what you do on Amazon. It influences the shopper and their journey. So such an exciting area. On the other hand, it's also very complex and probably only getting more complex over time. And I would describe brands as very much in the test and learn phase on this, working with some of those providers you mentioned, maybe other providers, trying to understand in the early stages here, all right, help us get our arms wrapped around the halo effect of some of these different retail media platforms, and then questioning the results. And how are these models formulated, and can we trust what these models are saying? Because usually it's saying something different than how the brand has previously been operating. So there's just going to be a natural pushback. But that's where I think we're at today on in terms of brands have a high appetite for it. We're seeing them test and learn this more. And I expect that type of environment to be with us, throughout 2025, but we're definitely progressing towards the end game of much more clarity in terms of not only what the impact is on a given site, but also the cross-channel impact. So I think this is one of the most exciting areas when it comes to retail media as we look forward.
I think this almost very naturally segues to what has been the standard question each year for maybe the past 3 years, as you do a year and recap and then a preview to the next year, is the market share. How big is the investment on Amazon? How much of a hold do they have on the market of investment in retail media versus other challengers in the space? And so that was part of what we got in our responses from our outreach to past podcast guests as well, was just how much Amazon will continue to have a strong market share and how much the diversification across other media networks will grow. And so if we look at different areas of challenge, we can kind of boil them down into the 3 areas where you've got the Walmart continuing to make their big gains. So the legacy brick and mortar challenger of Walmart and maybe Target. And then second to that, you've got the specialty retailers like a Lowe's or a Home Depot or Chewy. And then you've got the different e-com marketplaces with Temu and then TikTok Shop. If you're going to place bets and predict, what we'll see is who's closing the gap and gaining on Amazon in terms of investment, which of these categories or specific retail media networks do you see as taking market share from Amazon as we move into and through 2025?
That's a really interesting one. Like, I'm not sure how much, I think that the switching between like Walmart and Amazon, I feel like is category specific. Like if you're a grocery shopper that does a lot of your grocery shopping on Walmart, I think you're more and more likely to do more and more of that on Walmart and less on Amazon. But if you're a Whole Foods shopper, you're probably not changing to Walmart. Like, I don't think there's a danger there of you switching retailers as much. You know what I mean? So on that front, on like from that perspective, I feel like I don't see too much switching. TikTok Shop to turn from just like a discovery platform to a like more and more commerce happening there. That's where I see like actual sales conversions getting drained. But Amazon, I feel like, has already put up their guard around that because it's just by facilitating buy through Amazon right on the platform. So I feel like that's where I see, the suction happening.
The pull.
Yeah, and just to kind of taking a slightly different angle on this question of Amazon's dominance, I feel like there's a tendency in the industry to highlight all the threats that Amazon faces. Mm-hmm. But really, when we do the analysis of their business performance and we benchmark brands, they are such a juggernaut. Even some of like the category killers that you mentioned, think about the home centers. I mean, those businesses are down this year. Even their e-com portions of those businesses are growing low single digits. Amazon doesn't disclose category growth, but we'd estimate Amazon's growing high single digits. So just Amazon, even a Chewy in the pack category is underperforming Amazon. So we don't really see them giving up any ground from a GMV, a gross merchandise value perspective. We also don't really see them giving up much ground from a retail media perspective. I mean, we benchmark brands and ask them, how is the percentage of your retail media budget that's going to Amazon? How's that going to change in 2025? Is it going to increase significantly, et cetera? Like 5 options from increase significantly to decrease. And overwhelmingly, brands were increasing the share of their retail media budget to Amazon.
I got to double down.
There was this desire, this goal, or this like hope that we were going to have this like vibrant, flourishing retail media industry with dozens of fast growing retail media networks. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know if it's good or bad, Amazon has just soaked up so much of the space, along with Walmart is, also doing particularly well in grocery pickup. But Amazon is just not giving up any ground. And from an innovation perspective, what it's doing with AMC, what it's going to be doing with streaming TV, which we might talk about later, it just isn't giving up ground. So brands might have a desire to diversify away from Amazon. They might prefer that or want that, but we don't really see that happening. I mean, we think that Amazon a year from now is only going to be more important to brands than it is as we sit here, at the end of 2024.
I might have to dig into the archives of this podcast, Russ, because I was a dedicated listener to the year-end recaps that you and Kiri used to do with the top. You'd make your predictions for the year and then revisit how your predictions played out. And I think I could almost pull out a clip of you saying almost the exact same thing.
At least some consistency is key. At least some consistency. And the numbers this year back me up. So
you're consistent, and our industry is consistent. I mean, it just is showing yes, there's these other options out there, but Amazon continues to hold its space. Yep. So
a quick follow-up, clarification on that, Russ, is because there's 2 ways, right, that ad dollars can flow into a given retailer. There's one, which is the trading between retailers that Ross hinted at, right? More of my shoppers have moved to Walmart from Amazon or vice versa, so I'm going to recalibrate my budgets accordingly. But there's also the idea of the pie of retail media spend growing relative to other channels, right? Which I think is a phenomenon that we are all seeing. And so clearly Amazon is holding its dominance in the percentage of total retail media dollars. But I'm wondering if it's your perspective that because of a larger influx of retail media dollars from other channels, right? Traditional search or traditional social, that sort of thing. Will these other retailers see a rising of all ships from that in your perspective?
So what our benchmarking suggests is that dollars are flowing into retail media. Retail media is growing rapidly. Social is growing rapidly, though, too, with TikTok and Meta.
Sure.
So social is growing quite rapidly as well. But retail media is growing rapidly. But those dollars going into it are not evenly distributed. They're concentrating. Sure. They're going. Okay. Amazon is growing faster than the fast-growing retail media is the crux of what we're seeing. And we're not seeing brands necessarily looking to expand or spread their budgets across more and more retailers because they're capacity constrained internally or with their agency partner. So they can't just easily, spin up advertising on mid-sized retailers network. It's not like they just flip a switch. Like they got to dig in, or their agency has to dig in and figure out what the opportunity is. And they're also saying, look, there's so much scale potential on Amazon and on Walmart and maybe a couple others that if I get an incremental dollar, we're already doing a lot there. Let's put the incremental dollar with them. Same calculus that happens with Meta and versus social. I've got an extra dollar. Should I put it into learning Snap, or should I just put it on Facebook? I mean, there can be a rationale to put it into Snap. It just like the capacity constraint on the brand, I think limits that to a degree. So brands look at this as, all right, who has the most scale? Who has the most competitive intensity that is driving me to need to spend money? And Amazon, those are the two main factors in our work. And Amazon stands head and shoulders above that. And so they just keep plowing money into that. So even with all this quote unquote competition from other retail media networks, it's just not impacting Amazon in any measurable way that we can tell, nor that the numbers really bear out, all that much. I mean, Amazon's growth, say retail media is growing 19, 20% for it this year. Walmart, which is second, it's only growing a few points ahead of that. Right. And then you've got all these other retailers. They don't even disclose what they're doing because it's not a great story. And so we just think that, again, for better or worse, brands are just putting more and more money into Amazon. They like the capabilities that Amazon offers from a targeting perspective, from a measurement perspective. It's just a juggernaut.
We have a chart that we use internally, and it's our, incrementality on the x-axis and like complexity of offering on the y-axis. And Amazon sits at the upper right of that consistently, right? Like your dollars invested there tend to have like the most incremental value out of all the other retailers for all our cross retailer brands, with a couple of exceptions. And also they're diversifying their options. So there's more ways to spend, to test and learn and even absorb, that retail, the scaling of the retail pie that you mentioned, Jordan, like as that absorbs more broader marketing brand dollars, there's more opportunities to do streaming TV investments, and Walmart is, I think, getting close to being in that game, but I don't think Walmart's ability to like attract brand dollars, I think, is getting stronger too. So that's the only place where I see not like a true competitor emerging just yet, but I think Walmart is on the path to that, to
actual
brands
movement.
To be able to say, ooh, where should I be putting my brand dollars? Is it testing the Amazon, capacity here, or is Walmart actually going to be maybe better for me? And I think for some brands, grocery specific, Walmart is maybe going to become like more and more the default, the winner.
Yeah, and that's my sense, is like there's those category carve outs, right? If I'm in home goods or whatever, like Home Depot will probably still be good to me. If I'm in pet, Chewy will still be good to me. But a broad based one is challenging to find a competitor.
That's it's a good point on I hear what you're saying. I said that a lot in the last couple of years. I felt the same way about Chewy, but Chewy started to plateau, and it's not like, and pet is not plateauing on Amazon for like most of our brands. Like they're still continuing to scale effectively, and Chewy is starting to like flatten out.
I want to go back to what you mentioned, Ross, around the idea of brand, right, being an important growth of net new ad dollars, particularly that Amazon is seizing on, but that Walmart is catching up on. That touches on what I would say is like a grab bag of our last question here of different ones, but it's a lot of talking about, are there new plays in retail media generally that we see exploding into next year? This is something Scott Oshman highlighted for a couple ways of, particularly the sports vertical, right? As we see ad dollars going into live sports and streaming. So that's one thing. There are a few other trends here that I'd love to mention and see if anyone picks your interest for a choose your own adventure here. One is the idea of omni-channel, right? The unification of online and in-store by retailers. Like, do we see that as something that's moving the needle? That's something from Alicia Ponzani that she highlighted in particular. Martin Hubel talked about Amazon actually pulling back from their fresh offerings and going more into the CPG space in the grocery category. There's also notes from Scott Oshman around like more tightly integrated logistics and operations from Amazon side next year with AWD and Buy with Prime really like coming out of infancy and into maturity. Any of those that Russ and Ross, you want to kind of put a flag in as like, if there's one thing that we haven't touched on that I feel like is going to be the driver in the industry next year, where do you place your bets on those? Or perhaps one that we haven't mentioned at all, opening this up.
One of those.
True wild card. Yeah.
I got a wild card.
I mean, for me, I think the omni-channel one is an area that I think is like very unlockable on the Amazon side. Like Walmart does a very good job of it, of saying like, this is what's happening online. This is what's happening in store. They've got the data. They make it very clear, what the impact of your investment is online in store. It's like, it was a little bit muddy in the past, but I think most brands are pretty clear now. Like, yep, okay, I just think about it, holistically. Like, I don't care where the customer makes the purchase, online or in store, as long as it's happening, on this network. Amazon has introduced like, in the last few years with Whole Foods, like lots of data pipelines coming in saying like, yeah, you can tap into your Whole Foods customer. You can tap into live ad experiences, digital out of home, in store, in Whole Foods. But like, I haven't yet seen in the ad console populated like, yep, your digital ad led to an in-store Whole Foods purchase. That I think would be a big plus up for the Amazon ecosystem.
Yeah, just making it easier to understand that customer journey within Amazon's ecosystem.
That's
that makes sense.
Maybe two within that, or to build on that, is I know they're testing expanding assortment at Whole Foods, like side by side, where they can offer more like mass market type of items. So that, and as they do that, does that sort of just expand the sort of reach, I guess, of what they can measure in terms of that offline impact? That's something to watch.
Yeah, I agree.
Russ, Julie, go for your wild card. No, I'd love to hear the wild card.
Well, it's just one we haven't talked at all about today, and it's kind of playing off of something that Chris from First Mover highlighted as something that he was excited about in 24, and I'm excited to see how it continues to develop and play out in terms of an area of importance that's finally getting its due and will continue to kind of elevate into 25 is merchandising and the investment in optimizing your PDPs and your brand on marketplaces. So I know that, that speaks to Chris, like the actual storytelling of the product, the storytelling of the brand, and seeing brands actually invest in that. And I know that Dr. PDP, Lauren Levac-Gilbert, would also speak to that as well. I think it's something that's always played second fiddle to the clear return that you can see from media, but the impact on the media dollars is, we can't argue it. So I'm excited. I don't know if it'll be the thing that moves the needle in 25 for brands, but it's definitely one that I'd plant a flag around. It's critical. And I'm excited to see how it continues to play out with brand tailored promotions and developments like that as well.
We say retail media gets all the love and PDPs because it's historically harder to measure the impact. Yeah. It tends to, not get as much love, even though we're spending money to drive people to PDPs that might not represent the product or the brand as well as what we think. But maybe some of the measurement capabilities that have come to market, I'm thinking of like AI tools that will, look at images and rank them and that sort of thing. Maybe that can help bring that measurement component so then you can build the business case for investing, greater sums into PDPs, akin to what we've seen with the explosion in retail media budgets.
And we've made full circle. All roads come back to AI. AI will lead the way again in another way for us in 2025.
There you go. Perfect.
All right. Well, this was a fun conversation, and I don't think we've done enough justice to a lot of the insights that we got through the feedback from our guests throughout the year. There's just so much in there. So it'll definitely inform some of our conversations as we go into 2025 as well. So Russell, thank you both for being here and being part of the conversation today. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the things that we're excited about in 2025 play out and having more conversations about them throughout the year.
Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks all.